Hey folks, it's Tommy Z, and in this video, I want to share with you some highlights from a conversation we recently had with a very busy industry insider, artist, music producer, composer, songwriter, and a man who's made a living from music ever since he graduated from conservatory, which he attended at the age of 13, which is quite crazy. He's a good friend and collaborator of mine. We have worked on many, many big brand campaigns together. And recently we had Ruben Samama in our academy so he could actually talk to our students, so he could answer their questions. And it was a 2-hour conversation, but out of this conversation, I took out some of the best highlights, which I will share with you in this video along with my lessons. So first we talk about how Ruben discovered the world of making music for brands and what he was doing at the time when he discovered this hidden world.
I burned out from the touring because it was horrendous. Like I was away for 8 months at a time, and I'm definitely not somebody who was very comfortable with the touring life. And my brother was in advertisement, or is in advertisement, I should say. One day called me up and said, "Do you have anything lying around? Because I got this ad for this beer company and they're being difficult." Sure, I guess so. I don't know. And then I looked at it and I was like, I could probably just do this. It will be quicker if I just do it. And I was done in 4 hours. And I was like, wow, this is fun. Because you know, everything was done. The video was done. The film was done. It was just that the music didn't work. So I was just like, oh, what if I do this? And I did it. I sent it. He was like, oh, it's pretty good. They like it. And then they paid me. And I was like, wow, this is a lot easier than getting into a plane to Sydney, being jet lagged for seven years.
The number one risk, as we saw with the lockdowns, is that suddenly and overnight, you can lose all of the income from live performance. And some of our students actually experienced that. And they were grateful for having discovered this world of making music for ads because it supplemented their income when touring was not available to them. Besides, this reminds me of when I was a DJ and I had this feeling inside was like, how long can you DJ for? How long can you be at these nightclubs until 4 a.m.? I mean, obviously, it's not something that you can do for the rest of your life. You know, when the family comes and you got to be up and you got to have the energy during the daytime, how exactly do you manage to reconcile that? And so I think a lot of musicians have this question. I mean, unless you're like a Red Hot Chili Peppers or the Rolling Stones, and through some miraculous means, you're able to perform on stage till you're 120. I think most musicians will have to face this question at some point, which is like, how long can I tour for? And if I cannot tour forever, then what will be the next chapter in my musical journey? Now, the second lesson that I take out of this little excerpt is that it was Ruben's brother who was actually a part of the ad industry that introduced him to this ad industry. So it's kind of funny that Ruben was doing music pretty much full time from the time he was a kid. And like 99% of musicians out there, he had no idea about this world, even though his family, his brother was involved in this world. So that shows you how hidden this world is and how important it is for you to open your eyes to different possibilities apart from the ones we all know that are no longer working anymore. You got to open your eyes to different possibilities. And one thing we instruct our students in the masterclass is to write this thing called the love letter. And the love letter basically sets out your intention. It communicates your intention of you wanting to sit in the studio, be a craftsperson and creating music on commission from places that have money, so brands. And we ask our students to write a love letter to people in their circle to communicate this intention, because I guarantee you that somebody in your network knows somebody who's actually involved in our business, who's involved in advertising, and they can make the connection for you. So it is very, very important that people in your close circle understand that you're a musician. They understand you have a home studio, and they understand that you have the capacity to create original music on your own. And they understand that you have the intention of being commissioned and of offering your musical talent as a service to others in exchange for a fee. Okay. So reach out to your close circles and let them know This is your intention. You want to write music for moving media, for moving picture, whatever your musical intention is. Now, the last thing that I take out of this is like, I remember when I first got into the business and my eyes were open wide and I started working on these campaigns and I found them really, really exciting because these were musical challenges that had me twisting and turning from genre to genre, from style to style under a deadline. There was some pressure, but to any musician who is ambitious and aspires to create world-class music, these challenges, they're like fuel, right? They fire you up. They're like, oh, you want me to make something like this? All right, I got 2 days to do it. It gives you a very clean, concrete focus and direction. Okay. And that's what makes it fun for a lot of people who want to test their skills, their musical skills against the real opportunity. The reality is, folks, when you sit down in your studio to write music for yourself, very often there is no pressure. Very often there is no challenge. If you're honest with yourself, what ends up happening a lot is you end up tickling yourself by jamming on loops, okay? And you do what feels good and you just create music for pleasure's sake. But if you have any aspiration of going from amateur to pro, you're going to have to set a higher standard. You're going to have to actually set a goal and push yourself and challenge yourself, not just to pleasure yourself in the studio, as bad as that sounds, but to actually have a certain aim, have certain parameters, have certain restrictions, and to try to meet those goals, those creative themes. And this is what I found in my career is that advertising is very, very good at just channeling your focus and your energy and your creativity into a very particular exercise with clear goals, with clear deadlines. And that can be quite exciting and quite educational for any musical craftsperson. How did you then turn that into a thing?
So I did it. I was like, wow, this is fun. Maybe I should do this for a little bit, at least to find out a bit more about myself, but also to make a little bit of money. So I made 6 or 7 demo songs and I sent it to this guy, Chris, Chris, of course, Chris Koss from Massive Music. I didn't hear anything for a couple of months and I was like, okay, sure, this is the way it goes. For two months of my life, I thought Chris was the biggest asshole in the world. And then he sent me a mail and I found out he's actually really, really nice. But of course, I mean, it's like I really felt like I put myself out there, like I'm this bass player, I tour the world. I don't need to fucking do this. Yeah. I don't need to beg for work, whatever. Like, I just felt really bad. But of course, it's very humbling because it's true. Like, I'm nobody in that world. I need to start from the bottom. And I was also in my 20s. So you're also a little more cocky than when you're in your 30s because you still think that, you can do anything. Yeah. But anyway, he did write me back in the end with a Coke job.
Wow. Okay.
And I got to the final.
All right. So the clear lesson, folks, here is you actually have to put yourself together. Ruben had to put together some tracks. He never worked on ads before, right? So he didn't have a reel. So he put together some tracks and he sent it out to someone. He made contact with the external world. He came out of the basement and he showcased his talents with somebody else. And this is what happens to a lot of musicians in our business. You are so precious. You are so sensitive about your creations. You're so close to your work that you have not seasoned yourself as a true craftsperson. You see, true craftspeople tend not to get too emotional about their work. Of course, it happens from time to time to the best of us, but it's just funny to hear Ruben, now that he's done like countless campaigns and he's a veteran of our industry. It's funny to hear him say that when he first emailed, he had this feeling when nobody got back to him, when Chris didn't get back to him. It was like, screw this, I'm way too good for this. And I noticed this ego in a lot of you musicians because you are in your head, you're very close to your music. You're telling yourself a story, and this story is science fiction. It has no correspondence to reality, and it doesn't serve you, okay? So you should not be ashamed of taking pride in your work, of showcasing your work to the industry, and that means getting uncomfortable. That means reaching out, and that means being okay with the fact that people do not answer you. They're not always going to answer you. Most of the time, they're not going to answer you. And this is why we teach our students the polite and persistent art of following up.
The first 5 jobs he gave me were sound alikes. It was awesome because I think it was like a really quick education in music production. So suddenly you hear a guitar and you know, oh, this goes into the delay here, and then it goes into reverb, and then, oh, this is funny. Like it seems like the distortion is after the reverb because it's only in the tail, because you have to mimic those things.
Yeah.
You find your own way to fake it and make it sound actually quite good. I was really surprised how close I would get to the original with just like a €150 Ibanez guitar that I still use.
Once you get into the business and you start getting real briefs and they're asking you to actually mimic a certain musical reference, you become really good at listening and really good at replicating certain techniques that are responsible for creating some of the biggest music in the world. Because when brands do these campaigns, the ad agencies are usually putting the kind of music under the edits that is really inspiring, really cool, really creative. It's really something that's piquing people's interest. It's really something that's going to get your attention most of the time. But one of my favorite things about working in this business is working on these various briefs that go from genre to genre, from like vintage jazz to like goosebumpy electronic, is the fact that you have to really become great at understanding each of these genres. What is responsible for making those records sound that the way they do? What is responsible for creating this aura, okay, about this particular song? What is it? You really learn to listen, and you really learn some great techniques in various musical styles that will elevate you as a craftsperson. But folks, the most important thing I want you to remember is it's not about the gear. Like Ruben said, some of the first campaigns he did with his $150 Ibanez guitar, it's not about the gear. It's about the goosebumps.
Our world is to work with friends, because you need to be on the same page about what you're doing, which is you are Robin Hooding a bunch of big companies, having fun in the process to put it into work that's great. Because there is no other job that makes that much money in music.
Yes. Your work is only going to be as good as the people that you're surrounded by. So if your work is mediocre, the likelihood is you're only going to resonate with mediocre people. If your work is magical, if your world is world class, it's going to pull into your gravitational orbit the kind of people who are doing remarkable things. And so when the two of you get together in the same room, there's going to be creative combustion. There's going to be fire. There's going to be the right frequency. All right. And that collaboration is going to spark into something magnificent. And again, Ruben reiterates the point that there's really not another place where musicians like him, who are working out of their home studio, can make as good of money because the jobs happen often and they happen quickly anywhere else. If you're working on a film, you're going to be sitting there for 3 to 6 months with the director. Same with video games. Some of them take years. Sync, licensing, that's a lottery. That's really not about you. It's about throwing 1 million tracks at a music supervisor and maybe something will stick, but very often you are invisible in the process. But here in our business, it's very important what kind of a creative soul and creative craftsperson you are. Because to the extent that you are remarkable and coming to the table with something interesting and inspiring, you're going to pull other folks into your gravitational orbit. And together, you're going to Robin Hood the big brands, get the money in exchange for great, remarkable work. But this money will set you free to actually spend your life in a studio and perhaps create other music for the sake of music, okay, without having to please the marketplace. Let's look at the next one.
I have a lot of songs on the radio, and I'm lucky with that because it brings in money. But at the same time, I never think about that when I make a record because I have the ad work. Everybody's always referencing the 90s and the 80s and the amount of money that was being made. You know, you have a minor hit and you make $1 million, and that time is gone. Oh, the time of, but I don't really care because it's like, that's insane. It was also insane. The amount of money people made was, you know, they just wrote a song and they made millions. They could live forever on this one song. And I mean, good for them. I don't want to take it away from them, but to sit now and look back on that time and go like, oh, it's such a shame it's not like that. That's bullshit, because it's just going to get you in the wrong frame of mind. You know, like it's actually quite amazing if you can make some money just doing some music. So don't think about these big houses. Don't think about these fancy things. Think about the fact that you can perhaps find a way to survive doing art, doing music. And if doing a commercial is a way for you to, for instance, for me, commercial is the way that I can have this house, you know. I didn't pay that with art pieces.
And this is why I'm such a mouthpiece for opening your eyes to this possibility, okay? That I once discovered, that Ruben once discovered, that countless other musicians once discovered, which is, instead of selling your music, sell your musical skills in order to pay your bills by being commissioned by places that actually have the money and the need for your musical talent. Now, if you're getting into music to make money, that's a very bad reason to get into music these days, okay? There's better ways of making money, trust me, okay? If you're getting into music because you just cannot imagine that there's anything else that you can do, you believe that you were sent into this universe to share your musical gift with others, and you just don't want to spend time away from the studio, away from the workshop, at some kind of a job that's completely unrelated to your passion, then this is the solution, folks. You rent yourself out for a portion of a day to do a toilet paper commercial. You don't have to put your name on it. You invoice for it. You receive the money. It puts the food on the table. It allows you to breathe. It allows you to make music for music's sake, if that's your prerogative. Whereas instead, if you have to sit at a day job for hours and then you leave music until last, you're going to get home, you're going to be tired, you're just going to get stuck in a loop, okay? You're not going to have the energy and the strength to pull off something remarkable at the end of a long day. And notice a very important thing that Ruben said at the end. He's living in a house, and the mortgage is not being paid by his art. And Ruben is doing a lot of art. He's working with a lot of artists. He's doing exhibitions, but it's not those things that are paying his mortgage. It's being commissioned to create music for brands.
Be friends with the directors.
Yeah, the ones that do commercials and actually have a...
All directors do commercials.
All directors do commercials.
Because like to make a film. So my friend who I did the Hyundai with, we worked together on everything. He did all the filming for most of my projects. If I did a record with somebody and we needed to film, I got him on board, and and I would do all his commercials. But we also did 3 art films together, and now there is a feature film in the make, which has been 4 years in the making. And nobody can survive 4 years. He has 3 kids, so he's doing commercials in between to survive, and I think most directors do. But the great payoff is not just the money; it's the fact that if you find somebody that you can vibe with, like a nice director, and it's great now. Besides having done the art films with him and having a great director as a friend, which is super fun, because if you want to do something, you just call your buddy, and you both make that money from the Hyundai, so he's not going to ask you for money. But the fun part is that now we're working on a film, and there's money in that too. I mean, it's not the same money. It's not quick money.
There's no way to compete with you.
No.
You have that relationship with a film director.
No, I mean, it just makes no sense for him to call anybody else, because if he's like, I want to have it like this, I know what he wants. And not, he would, I mean, he lived everywhere in the world, but we would just call. I'd be behind the piano and I'm like, you mean like this? Or like, what are you looking for? And
yeah, you
just
really
talk about, I mean, the way that we talk about it.
Yeah,
too.
the way that we talk.
Well, you mean like this? And you're like, oh, that's cool.
But in our business, the product is really you and what you bring to the table and your vibes and the way you speak and the way you interact. The reason why I work with Ruben on many campaigns is simply because I enjoy his company. And of course, I enjoy the musical contribution that he brings to the table. Very often, the people that you work with are very likely to become your friends. And this is really the ideal scenario as far as my vision of the ideal life and work, is that the people that I'm working with are very likely the same people that I would invite to my house for a bottle of wine and a long conversation. And all of those things are like investments in the relationship. Okay. It's not something that you have to do, it's something that you want to do. You want to hang out with this person, and your bond becomes so tight that actually, when some opportunity comes up and somebody needs original music and they happen to be your very special friend, why would they call anybody else? There is no competition in such a creative connection. And folks, life is short. You don't want to spend your time just chasing projects and not paying any attention to the kind of people that you're going to spend your time with on these projects. Some of these advertising projects can be very, very tiring, frustrating. They're really like wild rodeos, you know? Some of them are smooth, some of them are horrible. And so life is short. You want to make sure that you're riding this rodeo with the kind of folks that you actually resonate with. And it's going to make things a lot easier in the long run. And not just easier, but better. I try to create the kind of circumstances. I try to surround myself with the kind of people who are very likely to be at my funeral. And now I'll let Ruben have the last word.
People that are gonna hurt you, and there's gonna be people that are gonna become your friend. And I found that believing in the good of the people has gotten me more. Even though I get hurt sometimes, I'm like, I still have more joy, especially getting older. I just realized, compared to some people who I know became very pessimistic, even though I get sad because I don't get that pessimistic, I just get sad. You know, in general, my outlook on life has been a lot more positive because I believe that they're good people. Mm-hmm. So yeah, go out into the forest, find yourself, but don't forget that you can't do this alone.
Now, folks, if you enjoy this conversation and lessons from an industry insider, I think you should watch this video right here, which is another conversation with another award-winning industry insider that's full packed with lessons.